Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Substance. Substare. That which stands underneath something, that holds it up, that lifts it up. You know, we think we're praying for a house or a car or a boat or a relationship or a healing or a this or a that. And what we're praying for is faith. The faith itself is the substance that we need in order to lift up my life. Faith is enough to lift up my life. Together, faith is enough to lift up my life. Heaven is attempting to push through. Heaven is attempting to push through and express on earth. Boy, that's some abstract stuff. This is what Mary Kupferle said. Heaven wants to come to earth, but can only do so through experiences that will jar us loose from old, limited ways of living and accepting. I want must change to thy will. And when it does, heaven is felt in the heart and known in the mind. So there is a reality that is pushing through, that wants to express, and that heavenly reality is experienced by each one of us as faith. It is the substance of things hoped for. And it is a higher reality. We keep the high watch. It lifts us up. The word heaven is rooted in the same word that means heave or lift up. So it's the activity of lifting up into a higher reality. I lift up into a higher reality. Together, I lift up into a higher reality. Heaven. It's a concept, isn't it? And a lot of people talked a lot about it. But it's not a place you go if you're good. It's not even a place that you go anywhere. I mean, it's a reality that is here, now, present, and you lift up into it by opening yourself up to faith. We've got to redefine our answers from seeing a miracle as a thing that shows up in our lives if we pray right, to recognizing that God is here now, infinitely present. God is the infinite abundance that exists here and now. And as we align with that God expression, that is our miracle. That in and of itself is our miracle. The miracle is the answer that shows up before the answer. Remember, I've shared about Joan Borisenko at Harvard, and how at Harvard they found that every single person who survived a terminal diagnosis miraculously, every single person had a shift in consciousness before the physical thing showed up. And what is that shift in consciousness? It is recognizing that faith is enough. Faith is enough. Together, faith is enough. Remember last week we talked about the golden key. We talked about moving it behind the demonstration that we're praying for, moving behind the prayer result that we're looking for, and then aligning with something that is deeper and more real. And not, as Emmett Fox called it, outlining the answer, but cooperating with the answer. You see, a miracle is not something that happens to you out here. A miracle is an experience in consciousness, a shift in consciousness, and then it outforms as is needed. But sometimes sometimes in the process of manifesting, miracles show up wonky and sideways. And you've got to move with it. And sometimes it means you've got to let go of all of your personal limitations, your ideas of the way things are supposed to be. I'll never forget the prayer that I prayed for divine justice when I was 22 years old. And I was working in a parts department. I took 2 years off of college. Parts department in a Mazda dealership, and all the rotary engines blew up. So they had to lay me off. And they gave me unemployment, and it was less money, but hey, that's kind of sweet. I was enjoying this, and I was looking for a job. Nudge, nudge. And then they unjustly and unfairly canceled my unemployment insurance. Yes, they did. And it was unjust, and it was unfair. And I prayed for divine justice. And guess what I had? A job. So, what is your idea of your highest good? Well, my idea of my highest good is, lollipops and rainbows. Well, no. Your idea of your highest good is not serving your highest good. It is not an accident that the studies show that the people who win the lottery end up just as happy 6 months later as they were before they won the lottery. And the people who have amputations end up just as happy as before the amputation 6 to 8 months later. Yes. What is this? This has to do with the fact that your state of consciousness is innate to your beingness and is an inner experience. And you say, well, is it something that's fixed? I can't change it. Circumstances aren't going to give it to me on the long term. Then what do I expect? You can shift it. You can shift it through the application of your spiritual practices. You know, I went in last month to Maryland and I spoke in a church and I did a board training for their board. And the minister had the guts last Sunday to tell her congregation, those of you who are not doing spiritual practices aren't going to be allowed to stay in this church long. And she said, that won't be that anybody will show you the door or push you out. It's that the energy in the room itself is enough that unless you're actively participating, you're not going to want to stick around. It's going to get too hot for you. I wouldn't dare tell you that. You know? She has guts. But I won't tell you that. But it's the truth. So, but you say, but spiritual practices, that's a lot of work, right? It's about consistency. It's about persistence. You know, Lynn teaches Love and Logic, a children's parenting method. And one of the things that the studies have shown is that it isn't as crucial whether a parent is strict or lenient as it is that they're consistent. That psychological health, you can be too strict, which is damaging, you can be too lenient, but it's, are you consistent? And your spiritual practice is like that too. You've got to be consistent. That means not maybe a lot, not maybe something that's highfalutin and that you would, you know, get to be on Oprah with, but it's something that you're working with every day. It's got some meat to it. You're working with it every day. Charles Fillmore said, persistence in prayer practice awakens the spiritual consciousness and sets into perpetual glow the core of your soul. And the result is the joy of a conscious union with God that is realized. So I'm going to just say that one part. That persistence in prayer awakens the consciousness and sets into perpetual glow the core of the soul. Think of you, in the middle of you, there's a core. And it starts vibrating. And you vibrate with it, but you've got to do something to practice and to activate this. That's your job with faith. And what do? Well, you come to services, because that's a good thing, but you can't expect the services to give it to you. You can come to Tuesday night meditation. That's really a good thing. Silent meditation is a good thing. You do your spiritual practices every day. You do a little something. You activate it through a conscious act of will. And it isn't the quantity so much as the quality and the consistency. Oh, there's a quote about what is it? Gosh, it's about, look at the ships on the high seas. This is Jesus' brother, James. Look at the ships on the high seas. They're great. They're driven by strong winds, but they're guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. Now, he's speaking here about affirmative prayer, speaking aloud. He's talking about that activity. But there's really two methods that we use in unity in prayer. One is active, and one is non-active. And Larry Dossey talks about them. One is affirmations and the affirmative prayer, and the other is meditation. He said that although we typically, when we have illnesses, seek out our help, and he's a medical doctor, and he's all for that, he said we can achieve more by surrendering to a higher reality, using what he calls directed prayer and non-directed prayer. That is, affirmative prayer and meditation. He said, good scientific evidence suggests that healing through prayer is a real phenomenon. Its effects have been seen across vast distances and across time. The fact that prayer can heal says something very important about our origins, our destiny. We're truly able to reach out into time and space with a consciousness that transcends this body. No ending, no beginning, the characteristics of an immortal soul. What's he saying here? He's saying that by directing our faith through affirmative prayer, doing the work that's directive, and then receptive, non-directed prayer, which is meditation, we can reset our consciousness in a way that circumstances will never do. And remember, whether you win the lottery or you have an amputation, the reality is that you're going to end up just as happy unless and until you change your consciousness. And faith is the activity of changing your consciousness, and that consciousness moves through you. And then, and only then, you can reset your set point of joy or happiness. Don't go scurrying around in your life, seeking out happiness. I remember back in the bad old days when I was in my early 20s and I was dating, I remember I dated a woman who believed that her goal in life was to be happy all the time. And she just about drove herself and me crazy, trying to be happy all the time. It's not possible, but you can be satisfied. You can be satisfied and build a consciousness and move through the circumstances in life, whether it seems positive or negative, or whether you're processing your feelings or you're moving through it, regardless of whatever's going on, and have a new set point. But it has to do with your spiritual practices. Daniel Goleman wrote an article in the New York Times, and he's the guy who came up with the idea of emotional intelligence. But he talked about a study from University of Wisconsin that said that how joyous you are, how much peace of mind and sense of well-being you have is actually measurable in your brain. Depending on how far to the left or to the right in your prefrontal lobes your energy is, they can tell how happy you are. Yeah. And they found that the person who had the best rating, which is to the left, was an associate of the Dalai Lama. But many people were over on the right. But they asked themselves, what can we do? Because they noticed that if it was to the left, they were happy, and to the right, they were less happy. Day by day, on an ongoing basis. And he wrote this article called Cajole Your Brain to Lean to the Left, was the name of it in the New York Times. I love it. Cajole your brain. But how do you do it? By teaching people to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. For 6 weeks, they found, of course, the people that continued it after the 6 weeks did move the energy substantially, and they had a completely different experience of life. But even the people who stopped after 6 weeks, it went back a little, but it never went back all the way. Every spiritual practice that you do has a cumulative effect. We think that our spiritual experiences are great big experiences, but the reality is that it's an accumulation of tiny bushes. It's that little rudder that Jesus' brother James talked about. It's the little things you do every day. A little practice, a little something, a little decision. Oh, I'm not going there. Oh, I'm going to go here. Oh, I'm going to spend 5 minutes doing this. Oh, I'm going to spend 10 minutes doing this. No, I don't need to watch the binge watch whatever the show is. I don't need to do that today. I will do this. Little things. And you will find that you will build a consciousness of faith. Faith that has meat on it. Faith that is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And then you say, well, then what about my answer? I would like an answer, please. I have needs. They're legitimate needs. I would like to see them show up, please. When you have faith and you experience that, according to that study I shared, that's the only time that then the answer can come forth. The only thing you have control over ultimately is your own consciousness. That is the one thing that you have some control over. Your own consciousness. I take charge of my own consciousness. Together? I take charge of my own consciousness. And you do this through your spiritual practices of active prayer and non-directed prayer, affirmation and meditation. But there's another piece of it. Being emotionally authentic. In the midst of all of this, not judging yourself when stuff comes up in your life. Somebody will look at you and say, what's in your consciousness that's wrong that you're experiencing these emotional states? And the reality is that it's something that's in your consciousness that is right, because you have gotten to the point in your spiritual growth, in your soul's evolution, that you're ready to deal with and face and grapple with these issues. You're ready for it because you have earned the right to deal with these things. And so the answer is to do what? to do as Jesus did. What did Jesus do? He faced and dealt with and released his feelings. He was authentic emotionally. The 2 times in his career that he did the 2 greatest miracles. The first was, of course, the resurrection. The second was raising Lazarus from the dead. In each case, it was immediately preceded by an emotional release. And the crude analogy comes to my mind of it's like a roto-rooter in order to let the energy flow through the pipes. He had to let go of whatever he was holding on to. With Lazarus, it says, Jesus wept. He was still angry as he came to the tomb. And then he said, roll the stone aside, unwrap him and let him go. Lazarus, come out. So he had to move with the energy and allow it to move through him. He didn't wallow in it. That's one of the mistakes a lot of us do. But he allowed himself to move with it. And I'm going to share, I say, what do we do with this? And every week I share tools. I share practices, things you can do. And you say, well, I came here to be inspired. Inspiration is good, but there's something more. It's making it a real part of yourself. And so right outside of Fellowship Hall today, we have the agitated energy process and the question and answer process. But the agitated energy process is a way to clear your emotions, to do as he did, to let himself feel what he needed to feel and release it in order to be open, in order to do the work he had to do of faith. What is the feeling? What is my agitated feeling is the first question. The second is, what is the false belief that I'm holding that is causing this feeling of sadness or anger? And then you let a belief surface like, I'm not good enough, or everybody's out to get me, or there's not enough to go around, or I am doomed, or whatever that negative belief is. Then ask, what true belief will calm me? And let one surface. I'm a child of God. Or let it surface so naturally. Don't do the one I'm telling you. I'm safe in God. The universe is abundant. God is enough. Faith is enough. I am safe. Whatever it is, let it come up and work with it and work with it and work with it. It's important to be emotionally authentic, to be real, as Jesus was real. And before his resurrection, he went to the Mount of Olives, to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he took his closest disciples with him, which brings up another issue. Who and what are you surrounding yourself with? What consciousness are you surrounding yourself with? It isn't arrogant or lofty. I was reading this from Eknath this week. He said it's not being exclusive or arrogant or somehow better than or superior to choose to spend your time and energy with people who affirm and align with your highest aspirations. Now you say, yeah, but you haven't dealt with my family. And I sometimes share this. I even got an angry letter from a woman once when I shared this, but it's in Mark, where Jesus' own family, remember Jesus' family? Saint Mary, Saint Jude, Saint James, and they came to him because they felt he was mentally ill and he'd gone out of his mind. He had lost his mind, is what it said. He has lost his mind, they thought. And his disciples came to him and they said, Jesus, your family's outside. And they were ready to take him away and put him away. They were going to commit him. What did he think he was? Jesus Christ? Seriously. Is it any wonder that they took that attitude? And so what did he say? Who is my family? These are my family. My father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters are those who do the will of God, those who are aligned with the higher good. Now in your life, that doesn't mean that you're going to turn your back on and shun and close out your family. Some families maybe you want to, but that you don't need to do that. What you need to do is create your intentional family. So maybe people in this room, maybe your 12-step group, maybe the people with whom, ask yourself, if you can help somebody, reach out to them. But if you're not helping them, they're just dragging themselves and you down, ask yourself, is this contributing to the wholeness of my soul and to their soul? So start being selective. They found that the people who had in the Harvard study, the spontaneous remissions, the healings of these terminal illnesses, always started to hang out with different people, make different choices of their pastimes in life. They didn't have time anymore for a lot of nonsense and a lot of lower consciousness stuff. That doesn't mean that you're harsh, but it means that you were discerning and selective. And so Jesus, it says here, accompanied by his disciples, left the upstairs room, went as usual to the Mount of Olives. He said, "Pray with me." And he prayed so fervently, in such agony of spirit, that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. And he released his doubt. Yeah, faith includes doubt. It includes being honest about the doubt. "Father, take this cup from me." He said, "If you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." So take it. He was honest about it. And then he let it go. You've got to be real. You've got to let your feelings out. But you don't wallow in your feelings. You don't stay stuck in your feelings. You don't make those feelings an object in and of themselves. You're emotionally authentic. You move through them. You process them. You journal them. You do the thing you need to do. But the important thing is, activate your faith through your spiritual practices. Activate your faith through your directed prayer and your non-directed prayer. Through your affirmations and your release. And realize that heaven wants to come down to earth. It's moving through you. It's pushing through you. There's so much potential in this room. There's so much potential in each one of us for a spiritual experience in every now moment. But we're so enamored of a specific result that we forget that the real answer is to be in the flow of faith, to allow the results to be what they are, and to move with it. And even though this is early, I think people are kind of sitting here going, wow, I need to do something with this thought. So I'm going to move right now into prayer, and maybe I'll talk some more later. So let's just open ourselves, and again, pull back to that heart space that says faith. Faith is enough. What I want is faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Faith is substantial. The faith I can feel. The faith I can carry around with me into every circumstance. The faith that I can experience no matter what's going on with me. Faith is the substance. Feel the vibration of this faith. Feel the energy of it. The evidence of things not seen. Faith is sufficient evidence that the highest good will work out. As Charles Fillmore said, "When I am willing that my human designs may fail so that the divine design may prosper, then and only then can I receive from the mind of God." So I'm willing that a divine design work through. I let go of my limited ideas and desires. I affirm and I realize that heaven is pushing through, desiring to come down to earth, and I'm willing to move through whatever states are necessary to move me into a new consciousness. Thank you, God. So now let's take a deep breath and let it out, and set aside every piece of paper in your hands and every thought in your head, and take another deep breath and let it out, and open up your hands and be aware that faith is the substance. And if we're looking for an answer, what you really want is faith. And faith is enough of an answer to outform and to meet every need. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, it says in Hebrews, and the evidence of things not seen. So, again, open your hands, let them be open. Set aside all thoughts, all preconceived notions, all assumptions of what the good and the true and the beautiful might be. And just say, I just want faith. Faith is enough. I only want faith. Faith is enough. Faith is the substance. It is substantial. I can experience it. I can feel it. It'll get me through every circumstance. It'll meet every need. It isn't something I have to beg for. I already have it. I'm open now. I'm open to it. Faith is the substance of the things hoped for. It's more important than the things hoped for. Results come and go, and they're all good and fine. But what I want is faith. Faith that will meet every need. Every need. And it is the evidence of things not seen. Where I can't see an answer, faith is the answer. I redefine my miracle from a thing that shows up in my life to seeing my miracle as God is already here and I show up in faith. God is already here present. My miracle is that I show up in faith. Faith is the substance. That means I can feel it, I can experience it, I can know it. And as I express it, it meets my every need. I am fed by faith. I'm sustained, nourished. So real is this faith. The evidence of things not seen. I'm immersed in faith. I'm experiencing it now. I release into it. I let go into it. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's that something that I can carry with me into every circumstance, and it will meet my every need. It will give me the guidance I need. It will change the outcomes the way they need to be. But I don't outline them. For it is the substance itself. It is the miracle itself. God is here now, present, and I show up in this consciousness of oneness, and my needs are met. My needs are already met. This is my miracle. And so it is.
It's time for our offering, and we're going to take as our offering statement, I give in faith and I receive in faith. Together? I give in faith and I receive in faith. And silently. And again aloud together. I give in faith and I receive in faith. And so it is. Amen.